The S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 ARG, or Alternate Reality Game, was a huge event created by GSC Game World in order to promote and tease the arrival of Heart of Chernobyl. Unfortunately, many fans seem to not know much about this topic, despite the large amount of information that was shared during the completion of the game. So let's try to change that. Hello stalkers and welcome to the Anomalous Dugout. Due to popular demand, it is time to take a look back at the ARG's story and documents. But before that, what even was the ARG? This alternate reality game, also known as Cypher, was a gigantic and complex event taking the form of a series of puzzles which stretched for over a year between 2020 and 2021. Anyone willing to try could participate in the game. The goal was to find clues scattered around various websites, social media and even the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games themselves, but also to solve different puzzles, decode secret messages and so on. All of it was wrapped into a nice and immersive story which put you in the place of someone within the universe of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R franchise, which is what I would like to focus on in this video. Overall, the event was an impressive display of heavy and talented work by both the creators of the game and the participants. Due to the very lengthy and complicated nature of the entire event, my intention is not to explain all the puzzles in detail and how they were solved. Instead, I will be looking at the storyline presented in the ARG and all the interesting lore and information about the S.T.A.L.K.E.R universe found in the many documents from the event. If you are interested to learn more, the sources used in this video will be available in the description. Starting with the cards. Indeed, in 2020 various people who received gifts from GSC found cards in their packages, which had some text written on them. After the entire deck was completed, 4 main groups of text were assembled, which all seem to be journalist reports dating from 2006, following the second Chernobyl disaster that eventually resulted in the appearance of the anomalous zone. The first text explains that on April 12, an earthquake of magnitude 3.5 was recorded in the zone, as well as a series of smaller tremors. While the authorities confirmed this, they refused to give any explanation as to what happened, and on April 14, it was declared that no accidents had occurred and that people should remain calm. However, a witness from a village close to the southern border of the zone asserted that military personnel, wearing no insignia, arrived in the area after the earthquake, and they went further north into the zone. The second text narrates the disappearance of a group of tourists, composed of 7 university students who had gone into the zone to study its soil and nature. Following the missing report from September 27th, border guards were sent to search for them. 2 days later, their camp was found in a forest, but it was empty. It looked like the residents had left in a hurry, abandoning all of their belongings. The next day, 6 of the 7 missing students were found dead deep in the forest. There was no sign of violence on them, and the cause of death could not be clearly established. Moreover, one student had a look of pure horror on his face, and all of them had a strange radioactive slime substance on their bodies. The 7th member of the group was never found. The third text introduces a special correspondent called Roman, and shares a disturbing event which happened in the village close to the border of the zone. A grave from the cemetery was found dug up, with the corpse missing. A few days later, it was now 2 graves which suffered the same fate. Residents believed it could be the doing of wild animals, while some claimed it was a sign that the end of the world is near. It was also suggested there might be a connection to a recent accident at the CNPP. The final text reports on the investigation of Special Correspondent Roman, who managed to get information from a contact working for the SBU. Apparently, the recent incident at the CNPP initiated a surge of anomalous activity in the area. Furthermore, witnesses from villages around the zone talked about mutated creatures which are held secret. It appears the authorities were trying to cover up everything as best as they could, and the journal could not reveal everything found during the investigation, which, by the way, ended with the disappearance of the reporter Roman. Lastly, there was some text that could not be connected to the previous articles. The most important information here is that the zone was closed off by security and several fortifications were built around the perimeter. Officially, these measures were taken in order to prevent intrusions, though some claim it is actually to avoid something from getting out of the zone. These texts are very interesting in my opinion because they offer an outside view to the events surrounding the zone in 2006, as if you were someone from the general public learning about what has happened through the press. We never really had such a point of view before. Overall, we learned that the government did its best to conceal the strange phenomena occurring in the area, but people remained suspicious about it. On another note, it is great to see the consistency with the dates. April 12, 2006 is now 100% the day the Sea Consciousness messed up their attempt to affect the noosphere. Getting deeper within the ARG story, on the cards were also discovered phone numbers which were used to contact a stalker who became known as the Cypher.
Hi there, name's Cypher, and if you're listening to this recording, it means I was right all along.
During the ARG, several audio recordings of the Cypher took place, in which he tasked us, the player, to help him out uncovering a secret conspiracy within the zone. Indeed, Cypher believed he had found out about something big, but required assistance solving some puzzles in order to investigate further. Firstly, we had to give him a code, which he used to open a locked bunker near Nyanev. Inside, Cypher discovered an old dead body wrapped in an ancient suit model, on which he picked up an official permit of entry within the zone. The poor man was called Veniamin Alexinko, nicknamed Venya, and got his permit back in 2014. The participants were tasked by Cypher to search for any information about Venya, so people turned to the internet with the hashtag #FindVenya. His Facebook page was discovered, and eventually an unknown person came forward who also revealed some stuff about Venya. We learned that Venya, who was doing journalist work, investigated the disappearance of the students within the zone. In 2014 he went to the Chernobyl area, where he was seen at the NICHAZ, known as the SIRCAA in English. This is the Scientific Institute for Research in the Chernobyl anomalous area, which was established following the events of the original S.T.A.L.K.E.R trilogy. However, Venya also disappeared afterwards and was never seen again. And now Cypher is on the same path of investigation. The next step required to go to the SIRCAA website. Using data belonging to Venya, players created an account and applied to vacancies, becoming a freelance agent of the Institute. As such, several tasks and pieces of information were given across the ARG by a SIRCAA employee simply nicknamed the Curator. We were now ready to investigate from the inside. The first task involved unlocking an archive, which contained a single document from the SIRCAA, the report of a search group supervisor to the security chief of the Institute. The report explains that the search team encountered a group of illegal elements within the zone, most certainly stalkers, who were dealt with. During the fight, the SIRCAA team lost 2 members, but managed to kill 7 stalkers and capture 2 others. who were also killed after interrogation. Before his demise, one of the prisoners revealed the location of a stash, in which the part of a photo was discovered. The stalker said it belonged to someone who had been acquainted with the object, the first lead on the matter in 7 years. It is unclear to us what this object could be, but it appears to be of significant importance to the Institute, and considering this took place in 2021, 7 years earlier would take us back to 2014, the time when Venya went to the zone. Moreover, it is worth noting the questionable methods of the SIRCAA, that does not hesitate to wipe out stalkers and execute prisoners. Following this, a new transmission from Cypher was received. In an almost state of panic, the stalker revealed that someone found out about the investigation and are now coming for him. Some very powerful people with important connections outside the zone. Thus, Cypher also told us to lay low as we could be in danger as well. The call ended with the noises of someone breaking in and shots being fired. At this point, it became clear that Cypher was indeed onto something big and he might get silenced for it. However, he turned out to be lucky in the end. Indeed, participants received an encrypted email shortly after, which was sent by a group called Problesk in Ukrainian. It could be translated to something like glimpse or spark. However, we do not know the official translation of this name just yet, so I will continue to call this faction Problesk in the rest of the video. The sender explained that his people managed to rescue Cypher in the nick of time, and Cypher told them about us. Problesk is accusing the people behind the SIRCAA of having very sinister goals, such as taking over the zone and threatening the whole world in the process. They are working to stop them, and therefore, with the fate of the zone and humanity at stake, asked to send them all the information gathered during our jobs for the SIRCAA instead of reporting to the curator. Speaking of which, a new message from the curator came up, but not much more was learned here. It basically shows that the SIRCAA does not tell everything to their employees, confirming that they have a lot of stuff to conceal. Also, they know that someone else is looking for the same thing, but they don't seem to suspect us just yet. Another email from the Problesk group was then received, in which they asked us to help attacking the SIRCAA website, in an attempt to find any loopholes in the system. This led to another set of puzzles, which resulted in the discovery of a new archive with 2 documents hidden on the website. The first document, marked Top Secret, dates back from 2014 and mentions the journalist Venya Alexenko. According to the text, Venya contacted the SIRCAA about this so-called object, which they are both looking for. Apparently, Venya did not know the full story about this mysterious object, but could be useful to the SIRCAA, who planned to use him to make progress on the search of the object. Obviously, upon success, they would seize the valuable object for themselves and silence the naive journalists. The second document was a recent order about changes in transportation routes, dated 2021. Here it is stated that deliveries using certain paths could be made without escort. With this valuable information, the Problesk group was able to carry out a successful raid on a SIRCAA convoy. The curator reacted to this, explaining that the attack was certainly caused due to a leak of information from a freelance worker. They were determined to punish the perpetrators, and we were now under suspicion. Meanwhile, new pieces of the puzzle were being collected in the form of secret messages hidden in images and videos, including this important piece of photography. As for the SIRCAA, it was not making much progress, as explained by the curator in another message. This is because the findings were only shared with Problesk, and not with the curator anymore. Then, a former employee of the SIRCAA published on the internet an article called "For SIRCAA and Everyone Relatable." The post describes how the Institute is a cover-up to fool people into thinking they are studying the zone for the good of humanity, when in reality they are doing it for much darker purposes. In an attempt to showcase the evil nature of the organization, photos and translations of a special document were attached. The paper is a report about the results of a survey that was issued to employees of the SIRCAA, more specifically freelance contractors, both within and outside of the zone. Overall, the report is very critical of the employees, interpreting most statistics as a bad sign of behavior and questioning the sincerity of the answers. It shows a very corporate side of the Institute, being concerned about the performance of their employees and using intrusive methods to their advantage. A few other interesting things could be learned from the document. Firstly, one of the questions was a nice reference to the Mark I's wishes from Shadow of Chernobyl. 29% chose immortality, 31% wanted the zone to disappear, 15% wished for power, and 19% asked for wealth. Secondly, the report explains that a large portion of the freelancers belong to the first S.T.A.L.K.E.R wave, which took place between 2007 and 2012, with many of them maintaining relations with the S.T.A.L.K.E.rs who are considered illegal elements within the zone. Therefore, it appears the SIRCAA employs a lot of veteran S.T.A.L.K.E.rs, but remains suspicious of their activities. Moreover, the document mentions the fact that some of these S.T.A.L.K.E.rs took part in events such as the assault on the brain scorcher and the campaign on Pripyat, which could be referring to the rush to the center of the zone that happened in 2012. As such, many of these agents were exposed to the radiation of the brain scorcher, and a significant part of them knows secret information about the X laboratories, like X18 and X16, something the SIRCAA would prefer to avoid. Anyway, after this, a new email was received from the Problesk group. The message explained that not everyone in the SIRCAA is related to the organization's sinister intentions. Mostly it is the leaders who are behind it all, and the normal employees carry out the orders and keep their mouths shut because they fear for the consequences. Problesk believed that with enough support, many agents could turn on their employers and help our cause, becoming defectors. Therefore, they asked to show support by flooding social media with the following posts. SIRCAA is the main enemy of the free S.T.A.L.K.E.rs, #STALKERS might. And sure enough, it did work. Many encrypted replies were left on the posts, which, when all put together, created a response message. In it, the Defectors thanked us for the support and said they'll try to alter the SIRCAA's website again. They believed it would not be noticed, since the site is a completely fabricated facade anyway. Lastly, they leaked a few more documents for us to read through. The first paper was a recent report from the SIRCAA search team about the latest developments. The attempts to contact freelancers, the leaks of classified information, the escape of Cypher, as well as the recent attack on one of their convoys were reported. The perpetrators, who we know are Problesk, are considered by the Institute as a terrorist organization that should be urgently eliminated. Moreover, an individual with the nickname of Snorchik was now heavily suspected of being a traitor responsible for providing the terrorists with secret information. The three remaining documents were extracts of newspapers from 2006, a page from Polesky Vestnik and 2 pages from Red Atom, containing the complete articles found in the cards at the very start of the ARG. To refresh your memory, these texts were about the seismic activity, strange occurrences such as graves being dug up, and the disappearance of a journalist named Roman. There was also an article relating the disturbing fate of a group of students who went to the zone, with 6 of them dying in mysterious circumstances and the 7th and last one vanishing without a trace. Following this, a new task was uploaded by the curator, involving decoding some message again. This sent the participants of the ARG into another series of puzzles. In the meantime, a new situation arose with Problesk, described in 2 of their emails. At first, the SIRCAA managed to locate their position and needed to be redirected to some false coordinates. This worked, but one Problesk member was still captured by the SIRCAA, requiring to decode the Institute's comms to find out where the man was taken and rescue him. Eventually, the puzzles were solved, leading to the discovery of a new SIRCAA report, which shed some light on what ended up transpiring. Indeed, the document explains that the convoy transporting the prisoner was attacked and the personnel killed. The former captive was also shot down and his body left there. However, not by SIRCAA members, but rather by his own group, Problesk. Perhaps they wanted to silence or punish him. Either way, it goes to show that Problesk is also ready to use any methods to achieve their goals. Regardless, the ARG shenanigans continued, but the whole thing was close to the end. I'm simplifying a lot, but basically the last piece of the puzzle was found, forming an encrypted message. Furthermore, a new clue appeared on the SIRCAA's website, probably left by the Defectors who had promised to alter the site earlier. With this, the inscription was decoded, leading to a large archive containing a bunch of images and top-secret documents related to the SIRCAA and experiments in the zone. Shortly after, both the curator and the Problesk group sent messages confirming the end of the ARG. The winners were also officially announced by GSC on Discord and Steam. So all that's left now is to take a look at these juicy documents. To begin with, the archive contains a file named ReadMe, which will help us understand the whole thing a bit further. The text is not signed, but there is no doubt about the person who wrote it. The journalist, Venya himself. In a shocking turn of events, it is revealed that Venya actually survived. In his message, he explains that he dumped his suit in the bunker near Yaniv to fake his death. It was very difficult for him, but he managed to withstand the harsh conditions of the zone, as well as avoid the people who wanted to silence him. And now he wishes to reveal the whole truth to the world. Which is why he shared this archive that contains some of the evidence he has gathered over all these years. Before diving into the text files, let's take a quick look at the artworks found in the archive. I'm sure you've seen them before, so I won't enter in the details, but some of these seem to depict scientists at work, as well as secret underground facilities located in the zone. Moving on to the first document. A letter written by the head of security of an unknown complex, most certainly an ex-laboratory. Indeed, the note relates an incident that occurred during an experiment involving the exposure of test subjects to psi waves. Due to an unexpected psi resistance from the subjects, the psi emitter required more power than normal, resulting in an overload of the complex power supply. This meant that power was withdrawn from the security systems of the cells, and the test prisoners managed to break out. Personnel was evacuated before any harm could be done to them, but this gave time for the subjects to escape into the wild, and none of them had been found by the time the letter was written. From elements found in the original trilogy, it appears there is a good chance this facility was actually Laboratory X-18. Indeed, we know this exact type of experiment was carried out in X-18, and a similar breach of security was described in a PDA entry in Shadow of Chernobyl. It is obvious such escapes of test subjects are partly responsible for mutants roaming free in the zone. It is also interesting to point out that the letter specifically makes mention of alpha psi waves, confirming that there are actually several types of psi emissions. This is something we suspected before, but it is nice to finally have strong evidence to support it. The second file is an operational report about a military endeavor carried out in the zone in September 2006. Following the accident in April, security personnel and scientists continued to work into the zone. However, all communications were lost on June 10th. You may remember from the OG trilogy, this was the day the first emission occurred. This second Chernobyl disaster prompted the government to react, and a large-scale operation was planned to take place on September 18th. One of the objectives was to rescue and evacuate any survivors within the zone. However, the top priority task was, and I quote, to deliver the carrier of the Special Tactical Experimental Fuse to the epicenter of the phenomenon. In the previous games, there was a rumor that the army tried to nuke the zone shortly after it appeared. Well, that must be where the story comes from. Yet, nothing in the document refers to a nuclear device. Instead, the explosive is simply called the charge, so who knows what kind of bomb that really was. Either way, the operation was a complete failure due to another emission, which wiped out most of the soldiers and led to the experimental charge being lost in the zone. In order to mitigate casualties, it was decided not to send new rescue missions, abandoning the potential survivors. Lastly, a perimeter was established around the newly named Chernobyl Anomalous Zone. All things considered, this document does not reveal anything new, since we already were aware of a failed military operation in 2006. Yet it contains much more details than the previous stories, so it's still a good find. The third document is a handwritten text from a notebook describing the evolution of a fetus following exposure to psi emissions. No doubt this was written by an employee of one of the X labs. The main observations include reshaping of the skull, growth of the brain, formation of tumors, and modification of the jaw towards a more predator-like design. Tissue samples were sent to the Agroprom Institute for molecular analysis. In Shadow of Chernobyl, we learned that the Agroprom worked as a cover front for Lab X18, and that the Institute never carried research in its intended field, which was supposed to be crop selection and genetics. I guess we now have a bit more insight into what their real function was. The fourth document is an excerpt from the transcript of a Central Committee meeting on the construction of an over-the-horizon emitter, which could very well be the Duga radar or the Brain Scorcher. A man named Saltykov, presumed to be from the Ministry of Defense, insisted on the importance of building a prototype and to continue the project near the power plant. Also present at the meeting were some very interesting characters. Ratmansky, possibly from the State Acceptance of Production, but more importantly, Suslov and Kamenov. Suslov was, of course, one of the scientists who worked on the secret experiments within the zone, and one of the founders of the Clear Sky faction. As for Kamenov, his name was mentioned in Shadow of Chernobyl to designate some types of psi machines called Kamenov emitters. Thus we understand these are extremely key people in the story of the zone, and they were involved with an antenna project near Chernobyl. The fifth document consists of 2 pages from the transcript of an interrogation carried onto one of the surviving soldiers of Operation Perimeter. which took place in 2006. The man narrated the squad's first encounter with an anomaly, a gravitational whirligig from the description. One of the scientists accompanying the group tried to approach the phenomenon to take some measurements, but he was quickly pulled into the air and torn to pieces by the anomaly. The noise alerted some creatures, obviously mutants, that immediately attacked the soldiers. A private and a sergeant were killed before the squad retreated, giving up on the mission. The sixth document is a report card about the failure of Operation Zenith, dated from 2013 and organized by Dalin from the SIRCAA. The mission aimed at disabling the generators resulted in a large loss of lives and equipment, akin to the disastrous events of 2006, but also destroyed the trust the Institute had managed to build with its allies from the Perimeter Security Service and the Duty faction. According to the report, Dalin's poor preparation was responsible for the failure, and an investigation was opened. It is surprising to see that in spite of such severe accusations against him, Dalin remained head of the SIRCAA up until the events of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, taking place more than 7 years afterwards. Moreover, the card makes clear mention of the famous generators. It is interesting to note that across several documents from the ARG, the epicenter of the second Chernobyl disaster is said to be located not at the power plant, but rather a few kilometers north of it, which coincides with the center of the zone in the S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 map and seems to tease the fact that the old concept for the generators will be back. The seventh file is again a report card, this time most likely from before Operation Zenith. Indeed, the document refers to the preparation of the operation, which should be discussed among other topics in an upcoming meeting. The card explains that a peace treaty known as D4 was concluded, leading to a ceasefire between Duty and Freedom, said to be the two most dangerous and numerous factions. Mind you, this was back in 2013, so I wonder how the situation of these two groups will have changed by the time of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. The truce also included a new faction called Noon, whose leader will be Strider, probably composed of ex-monolith stalkers who woke up from the brainwashing. Lastly, Colonel Korshunov and his group, the Ward, are also mentioned. This means Korshunov, just like Dalin, has been doing this from the very beginning of the creation of the Institute in 2013. The eighth document is a sheet of rules to follow by ex-laboratory employees during experiments on test subjects. The rules include the use of anesthetics and other drugs to avoid unnecessary pain to the subjects. Contrary to what one might believe, these rules imply that there was at least some sort of ethical protocols applied to the research. Whether or not these were really followed is another question. A nice detail revealed in the document is what seems to be a unit of measurement for the intensity of psi radiation, the Psi-A. Oh, and there are obvious traces of blood on the paper. I guess we can assume tragedy hit this lab just like it did with many others. Lastly, the 9th and 10th documents are orders or delivery sheets of some kind, listing equipment for use in scientific research. For example, you have items such as a refrigerator, electric dryer, glass tank, water distiller, laboratory table, microscope, magnifying glass, and so on. I could not spot anything important in these papers, though. Phew, finally, I think that was all the documents. I hope I did not forget anything important. Alright then, it's time to recap. On April 12, 2006, an unknown accident occurred in the zone, resulting in a series of earthquakes. the epicenter of which could be located around a kilometer away from the power plant. In the following days and months, very strange events took place in the vicinity, with villagers reporting increased military activity, creatures roaming in the wild, graves being dug up, and so on. A reporter named Roman went on site to investigate, but he quickly vanished without a trace. On June 10, all communication with security and scientific personnel in the zone was lost. This was due to the first blowout. Cordoning off the perimeter started, but even more soldiers disappeared in the zone. Therefore, it was decided to launch a large-scale operation aimed at detonating a special tactical experimental fuse at the center, and, if possible, rescue any survivors. Scheduled on September 18th, the mission was a huge disaster due to the triggering of another gigantic emission. The charge was lost and most men died or were abandoned in the zone. The perimeter was fully established around the Chernobyl anomalous area. During this time, people recorded the first contacts with anomalies and mutants. At the end of the month, a group of 7 university students went to the zone to study its soil and take measurements. They disappeared, and 6 of them were soon found dead in mysterious circumstances. The last student was never found. Then the years passed, and eventually unfolded the events of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R trilogy, concluding with the creation of the SIRCAA in 2013. A peace treaty was established between some factions, and Operation Zenith was carried out with the goal of disabling the generators, though the mission resulted in a huge loss of life and resources. Around the same time, the journalist Veniamin Alexenko, nicknamed Venya, started to investigate the case of the missing students. In 2014, he went to the zone and to the SIRCAA, claiming to have information about the Object, an unknown item hidden in the zone that the Institute leaders would really like to get their hands on. Venya struggled to survive and people tried to silence him, but he faked his death by dumping his suit and entry pass in a bunker near Yanev. Again, many years passed. This is now 2021. The stalker named Cypher found out about the conspiracies surrounding the secrets of the zone and the SIRCAA. He sent clues to the outside world in an attempt to find help in his investigation. The participants of the ARG gave him a hand, and Cypher discovered Venya's pass in the bunker near Yanev. We learned about Venya and infiltrated the SIRCAA by registering as one of their freelance agents. Cypher was about to get caught, yet he was saved by a group named Problesk, who opposes the SIRCAA and wants to expose their nefarious nature. The gamers helped them out, uncovering archives of interesting documents along the way. In the end, Venya resurfaced, sharing the last batch of evidence files with the world. Now that you know the whole story, it's time to talk about theories and speculate. To begin with, the ARG gives us a better idea as to when S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 will take place. Indeed, it is almost certain that the game will unfold after the ARG, which would be after 2021. Moreover, in the Come To Me trailer, Dr. said,
"And what do we have a decade later?"
hinting that 10 years have passed since the trilogy. Also, a few years ago, GSC said Heart of Chernobyl will take place in a modern world. Lastly, from the trailers, it looks like it's either spring or summer in the zone. With all of this in mind, I believe the events of the game will occur around the middle of the year 2022. Then we have to discuss the Object the SIRCAA is desperately looking for. We currently have no idea what this item could be, but rumor is it may be what we call the Heart of Chernobyl. In that case, it is obvious this will be the most important element of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2's story, so it makes sense we weren't spoiled as to what it might be. Perhaps it could be a powerful artifact or anomaly located at the center of the zone, or a secret device built by the scientists before the second disaster. Some claim it is the unknown machine seen in the Come To Me trailer. Another possibility is that the object is the mysterious charge that was lost during the military operation of 2006. Considering the authorities were aware of the secret experiments to some extent, and the really peculiar designation of the bomb as Special Tactical Experimental Fuse, it is possible this item was prepared in case the group of scientists would go rogue. Maybe it is a charge capable of affecting the noosphere and therefore the zone, making it extremely valuable. We really don't know for sure, but it is clear this bomb was not an ordinary one and was very important. After all, we never heard of any other similar device being used by the army in the following years. The next thing to highlight is the Problesk faction. That remains very mysterious. Basically, the only thing known is that they will be actively opposing the SIRCAA and the Ward. The word Problesk can be translated in different ways. It means glimpse, spark, but also flash and flicker? That's right, no doubt about it. The flashes flickers inscription on the map must be a reference to this group. Perhaps that's the location of their base, or they will conduct a large operation in this area. Furthermore, it has come to my attention that a group with a similar name existed in the original trilogy. Thank you, Spartan Mosey. Oh, and by the way, please go check out his channel, he makes great stuff. In Call of Pripyat, if you help out Topol's group, they will be fully integrated in the Scientist faction and become known as the S.T.A.L.K.E.R Scientific Research and Investigation Team. S.T.A.L.K.E.R translates to spark. Coincidence? Probably, but who knows. Maybe Topol's group eventually joined the SIRCAA, but they realized the true nature of the organization and decided to turn against them. I could see that happening. Also, we should remember that according to the ARG, the normal employees of the SIRCAA don't necessarily agree with the Institute's goals and methods, but they still carry out the orders in fear of the punishments. I have a feeling this will be the case for Professor Herman, and possibly Ozerski if he also comes back, since I believe these two are inherently good people. Last but not least, remember the stranger from the E3 2021 trailer? Did he suffer? No. Good. He did not deserve it. And the bullet was well deserved. It's a shame you treated him like that. I know. You don't think I wasn't looking for ways to spare his life? She couldn't be free unless he died. But now, just look at her! No, Skif. I'm not giving her to anybody. The zone gave me a life. A new life. The one that I am prepared to return if I have to. I will protect her. Always. Considering his speech in which he vows to protect the zone, and also the fact this trailer dropped while the ARG was in full swing, many believe he could be the leader of Problesk. But who is the stranger? There are a couple of theories. According to the first theory, the stranger is actually S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Not counting the hair, the two look a lot alike, and even share a similar scar on the face. The one thing that does not add up is the fact that S.T.A.L.K.E.R in Call of Pripyat wanted to destroy the zone, so it seems to contradict what the stranger says. However, we have to remember that many years have passed, and it is possible S.T.A.L.K.E.'s views on the zone changed over time, especially after witnessing the questionable actions of the SIRCAA. As chief scientific consultant of the Institute, he would have had the opportunity to discover the shady side of his superiors. It is interesting to note this was even a plot point in the cancelled version of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. Now, if the stranger is indeed S.T.A.L.K.E.R, then the person he probably ordered to kill could have been Dalin or Korshunov, since they are key actors of the SIRCAA and the Ward. However, some people believe the man who was shot is actually S.T.A.L.K.E.R, rendering impossible the first theory. Indeed, if S.T.A.L.K.E.R did not change his idea of destroying the zone, he would present a great threat to it, because of his knowledge and experience. Therefore, it would make sense to eliminate him to protect the zone. Thus, a second theory about the identity of the stranger emerged, claiming he is none other than Venya, the journalist. If we take a look at his photo from 2014, it appears possible the stranger could be the same person almost 10 years later. In his message left in the ReadMe file of the final archive, Venya was adamant about going against the SIRCAA and revealing the truth to the world, and I quote, to reduce the influence of evil in the zone. He also mentioned Problesk in a way that indicates he is not part of them. Rather, he seems to be more of an independent person, which could match his name of Stranger, you know, someone who is not affiliated with anybody. Either way, the idea of a journalist investigating the secrets of the zone is a very old concept dating from the development of Shadow of Chernobyl. Originally, there was such a character who was very important to the plot, but he ended up being cut from the story. Now, there is a third, crazier theory about the stranger. In one hand, it seems he could very well be S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and on the other hand, it is also plausible the person he assassinated would be S.T.A.L.K.E.R. What if both were true? There is an old concept from Clear Sky's development according to which, under certain circumstances, the zone can create copies of stalkers. At some point, it was considered that S.T.A.L.K.E.R would have been copied during the mission at the beginning of the game, so there would be two versions of him. Moreover, it seems the old plot of the cancelled S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 included something similar, with S.T.A.L.K.E.R having a clone of some sort. What if this will be a twist in the new game, where one S.T.A.L.K.E.R is working for the SIRCAA and the other working against it? Kinda unhinged, I know, but everything's possible in the zone. Do you have any other ideas and theories about the ARG? Make sure to share them in the comments below. This video required a lot of thorough research to make, but it was heavily requested, so I hope you learned a lot of stuff while watching. And in case you want to take an even closer look at all the documents and puzzles, the sources are in the description. I can feel more Heart of Chernobyl news are coming, so stay tuned, stalkers, and good luck.